nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid Podcast. It is September 8th that we're recording this, and it's a special time. It is international break, which means that we carved out a little bit of time here to bring back Matt Wiltse on the podcast. Matt has to be in and out of the podcast because of his life, but he's going to be more on the podcast than off of it. And the last podcast we did with Matt before the season started, which was a tactical preview of Xabi Alonso's debut season, the comments everywhere were like, yes, Matt is back, Matt is back, Matt is back. So this will be a nice little treat for everybody listening to that. Matt is back again, and he'll be back a lot this season, hopefully. But Matt, welcome back.
Hey, Kiyan. Yeah, no, I appreciate all those comments. And, I love this. I love chatting with you and chatting all things Real Madrid. And so I'm looking forward to it.
So just off the top of my head, the things we talked about before the season started was the pressing, the defense, the offense, set pieces, the role of Arda Güler, the role of Tchouam&eacute. And I think we're going to revisit some of those themes throughout this podcast because it's only been 3 games. And so when we're talking about a tactical review of the first 3 games, it's as silly as it sounds in some regard, because it's only been 3 games and the opponents haven't been elite. But there are just things that we can analyze and maybe just be encouraged by and talk about also the things that we have not been encouraged by. So I think, Matt, you and I were talking about it off air, and we can start with the defense. After these 3 games, the stats have been rolling out by these analytic accounts, like op-eds, who's been talking about the fact that Real Madrid have been so good defensively these past 3 games. I'm going to put up this chart, which was made by our friends over at La Pausa Pod, which, by the way, if you guys like kind of the more nerdy, analytical La Liga dialogues, I would encourage you guys to go and check out La Pausa. It's run by our good friends Robbie Dunn and Jamie Kemp, and those guys are awesome. So you should go check it out. It's in English as well. So they put out this chart, Matt, which shows the big chances conceded after 3 games. You see Real Madrid at the very top with just 1 chance, and our friends over on Barcelona at the completely opposite end of the spectrum at 12, which is an entire discussion on its own, which we don't need to get into necessarily today. But we're going to talk about the Real Madrid side of things. 1 big chance created. How real is that to you, Matt? Is this a number that we take seriously after 3 games? How much do you read into it?
I think it's hard to discern too much out of it given 3 games and given the level of opponent. But you can always caveat that by saying, well, with this type of opponent last year, we struggled and we gave away countless counterattack opportunities, and Thibaut Courtois had to be Superman. And in these 3 games, he's had relatively nothing to do. The stats back it up. And I think the other stat we talked about off air was the fact that, 1 big chance conceded, that is equivalent. No team has done that since Pep Guardiola's 2008 Barcelona. That one stood out to me, and I was pretty taken aback by that stat. And I think we all have seen this play out in watching the games. Like, it is 100% apparent when you watch this team, the difference under Xabi Alonso when it comes to counter pressing, when it comes to the intensity at which we win the ball back and how quickly we win the ball back and how much further up the pitch we win the ball back. And this is what we talked about on our tactical preview pod a few weeks back on, like, this is what we expect to be one of those first principles of play from Xabi Alonso. And it may not be his number one, it may not be something that he goes to every single game, but I think it is going to be something that he drives into this team and becomes a principle of play.
Yeah, I think the counter argument to saying, well, it's only been, look at your opponents and it's only been Mallorca and Osasuna and Oviedo. And I think the counter argument to that is exactly what you said, which is apart from Oviedo, we haven't played in a long time, these are opponents that we actually would struggle against last year. We said similar things during the Club World Cup when we played pretty good in every game except the PSG game. And I think the last stat is that, the fact that this hasn't been done since Pep's first 3 games in 2008, which is pretty interesting as well. But I think if we're looking at the reality of it, yes, there will be a time where our defense is going to look bad. I have no doubt about that. I'm sure that there are teams who we're going to face pretty soon. We got a difficult Champions League schedule coming up. There are going to be teams that bait the press. They're going to play their way through it, or at least be equipped to do it, and they're going to be very, very punishing in transition. And we have a high line, and I think we're going to keep an eye on that. But I do think it's fair to point out that defensively, this team has looked fantastic. And I think just the fact that we haven't had to rely on Thibaut Courtois much is very telling and very encouraging to me. What are some of the things, Matt, that you see that actually feed the eye test for you? And you're like, you can see those tangible things. Like when you're watching it, you're like, this has improved on the defensive end. This is why we're able to limit the opposition entries into our final third.
I think for the most part, Xabi's gotten everyone to, at this point. Now, again, we haven't played a big team like PSG who can play around this, as you said. But for the most part, in these first 3 games, the team is bought in. Like everyone's doing the work. You've even seen, I think there was a video circulating around of Mbappe, like kind of doing the Dembele, where he was geared up ahead of a goal kick, like ready to press. And so now how effective they will be and how my pushback on that has always been like, yes, Mbappe and Vinicius can attempt to do it, but are they good at doing it? That's that's a whole different discussion. But I think we're seeing people buy it, and then I think the other big piece is just the rest defense. Like and when I say rest defense, for those who aren't familiar with the term, it's basically just the position you occupy when your team is in possession of the ball, but you're prepped ahead of time on the position you're occupying is prepping you for when you do lose the ball, you're in the right place defensively to then quickly either recover or press or do whatever you need to do. And so I think our rest defense, those positions we're taking, have been infinitely better under Xabi Alonso. And I think that it's the fullbacks, the center backs, Tchouam&eacute, like all those guys are they're in the right spots to quickly suffocate opponents and deny any chance of getting out.
So when we did the roundtable before the season on the website, our annual preseason roundtable, I had said that positional play is one of the things that I'm most looking forward to having for Xabi Alonso to just come in and fix. I think like there were so many games last year where Real Madrid looked positionally inferior to their opponents, like second to every 50-50 ball. There's a reason why that happens. With this team, I have so much more confidence in knowing that they're going to be in position to pounce and win the ball through their counter press. I think the counter press has been great. And I think maybe we can transition to talking about the press. And I think if you're going to nitpick like Mbappe and Vinny, whether they, because you said whether they can press, like it's one thing is the effort. The other thing is like, can they get their pressing angles right, for example? Like, and can they
Yeah.
do all that? To me, like, effort goes a long way. Like, that's the first step.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think if you look at, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is off the top of my head, and I'm saying this now because I remember at one point someone, I think on the commentary or somewhere, said that Real Madrid, every single goal that they've scored this season has come off the back of winning the ball in high up the pitch. And I'd have to go back and someone has to fact check me on that. We've scored what is it? 1, 4, is it 6 goals this season? Something like that? 5 or 6? I don't remember. But off the top of my head, like, yeah, all those situations were, the opponent giving the ball away, through our press, or we're picking the pass out of the back. We're picking off, um, these defenders getting swarmed and not having any passing angles to hit. And there were a ton of sequences where we won the ball that didn't lead to goals, but they were just great chances. You think about Mallorca, Trent, he had a couple interceptions early in that game, just because Mallorca just kicked it to him, and the team was in such good shape to pounce and intercept the pass. And those Trent balls he had, I mean, two in that game in the first half which were incredible. And just situations like that. And I think if you look at what's interesting is that, well, this is from Understat. Real Madrid are third in passes per defensive action. So Barcelona are actually more aggressive than Real Madrid in that situation. But I think what's interesting is that Real Madrid are capitalizing more than any team in that situation. And if you look at this, Real Madrid have 13 tackles in the final third, which is the most in the league. And you can see the difference now in the thought that Xabi Alonso was putting into fixing the defense, because I think that was the priority for him, was to fix the defense. And I was talking to my uncle at a family function the other day, and he was like, and he's a casual, so he was like, he was asking me to explain what's changed about Real Madrid's defense. I was like, okay, how do I put this into layman terms? Basically, the philosophy is, you know, their defense has improved not because their goalkeeper is making incredible, miraculous saves, but their defense is good because their goalkeeper is not even being called into the action. The defending starts from the front, and that's what Real Madrid are doing really well this season so far. I thought about you immediately when I saw those videos of Mbappe locked in on pressing on those goal kicks against Real Oviedo, because the big conversation that we had was, is this going to work? Mbappe, Vinny. And I think this leads us into another discussion, which is it working in your eyes? What do you think about Xabi Alonso's decision to bench Vinny against Real Oviedo? And are we going to finally get a system where these guys coexist and they buy in? Or is there going to be more rotation? How do you see this happening?
I I think so far it's working, right? But this is kind of what we assumed would be the case against the level of opposition we've played so far. I still think many are skeptical, and rightly so, given PSG and all the big games we had last year, of what this looks like when a big game rolls around. And I think we will know soon enough. I think we have like a gauntlet of games. It's either in October or November where we kind of go through the ringer with Atleti, Barca, and then some big Champions League games. So we will know soon enough. And I liked the decision to bench Vinny. I think we've already seen it start to turn around his form, whether that was the catalyst or not. Like it worked. And I think we're starting to see that this is Mbappe's team. Like Mbappe is the guy this year. It's Mbappe is the guy until Vinny proves otherwise, and he has to prove otherwise. And so I like the messages that have been sent. I think I like the fact that, hey, everybody knows I'm a Rodrigo fan. I like that he's going to get reintegrated into the team and be a rotational piece and be on that left wing. I think that competition may spur Vinicius on even further. And I think you made the point that Xabi Alonso has really started this foundation in the base from building the defense up forward, and then we'll start to see things evolve in terms of, hey, playing against a deep block, more patterns of play in the final third, whatever it may be. But the base has been, and the foundation has been, defense. And I actually, in the season preview, what I wrote about when we were asked the question, hey, is it what is going to be the priority, offense, midfield, or defense? I said defense, and I said because last year we conceded 12 more goals in La Liga than we did the season prior, the double winning season. And that 12 goals, I mean, that's material. That's massive amount of goals versus we had been running like kind of 30 goals conceded prior to that. And I think you can get back to that and still have an offense that's hitting on all cylinders. And so I think that's where Xabi Alonso likely sees the opportunity as well. It's like if you can get those goals conceded down, the rest will start to fall into place.
So this is why I said also that I think our floor is going to be higher. Like I think we'll accumulate more points than we did last season because I think we'll be better in the games we're supposed to win. Now, if the team suffers against the elite teams, because one of I think the weaknesses, every team has a weakness. I think now Real Madrid's weakness will be, you know, our high line. If teams are able to exploit it, that's just something that happens to any elite team who focuses on keeping a high line and pressing high. You always are going to run the risk of bleeding, chances and breakaways against really elite opposition. That's why you need goalkeepers high off your line. You need midfielders who can really track and transition, all that stuff, offside traps. So we'll see how that goes against the elite teams. But I think, um, and I think the pushback maybe that some people will have with what you said about like the 12 goals conceded is that 12 extra goals conceded is that probably like I lost track. Was it like 6 or 7? Some of those were in 2 games against Barca. I don't know, but hey, either
Well,
way, those are
and
still big. Those are
yeah.
chances that we would concede. Like you have to count them. Like that was you have to win those games as well. And like the fact that those games actually could have been worse is also something to point out. So
And I mean, if you think about it, if you count Militao, like it's basically an entirely new back line
mhm.
this year. So that alone, forget like all this new system and the counter press. Like I think that alone will improve our goals conceded. Just having better players in those positions.
I don't think we like you and I spoke about Militao in our preseason preview, or if we did, it definitely wasn't like something we focused on. And I personally didn't really think of him too much, in part because I was just worried about how any player would come back from 2 ACLs and basically not playing for 2 years. Are you encouraged?
I am. I mean, I think he's come back better this time around than he did the first time around. Remember the first
Yes.
time around, he was struggling.
It took him
This
a
time,
while anyway. This time
yeah,
it seems like he's integrated faster.
yeah. So, and I think we're doing. I mean, I'm happy. I mean, Carlo did us a massive favor by props to Carlo by not calling him Militao, Rodrigo, or Vinicius. Um, and
Honestly, we never talked about that
and he
publicly, but
called Rafinha. He called up Rafinha. I think that's
you
hilarious.
that is like true. Like Carlo is a legend, man.
Yeah.
Madridista to the core. Like I don't think if there was no Madrid connection there, he probably wouldn't care. Like,
Oh
but
yeah,
the
I
fact that,
agree.
yeah, I mean that's massive
And
for
the
us.
fact that he called up Rafinha just makes me laugh so
Yeah.
much. um, and so yeah, I think I think we're doing the right thing too, because you can already tell like we're kind of just playing him one game a week. We're not pushing it. Like with Carlo, I think he would have pushed it with Militao. And so yeah, I think I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic.
As cliche as it sounds, it's a new signing.
It is.
Um,
It really
yeah.
is.
So it's just funny because I was looking at the roundtable discussion. Now, to be fair, I don't think we actually did this before the season started. I think we were 1 or 2 games in. We
One
were at least
game.
1
Yeah,
game.
one
Yeah.
game. One
So
game.
I maybe that's cheating a little bit, but I did have Militao as my unsung hero of the season.
Yeah.
You and others rightfully had Fede Valverde because I mean, how could you
I
go
just feel
wrong
like
with a
it's
pick
always
like that?
Fede. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what is your I don't know if diagnosis is the right word. I guess analysis. What is your analysis of Fede in the first 3 games? Because I think there are a lot of people who are making a deal of, this guy isn't being used properly right now. We no longer need to rely on him. Carlo needed him and Jude to cover so much ground and do everything by themselves. Now they don't need to. Like, do we need a different profile against the low block? Where are you on that scale?
I mean, I definitely don't think you take him out of the team even when you're playing against the low blocks, but I do agree that uh he doesn't have to do as much, just like Thibaut Courtois doesn't have to do as much. And thank God, like especially with the amount of games that Fede Valverde plays every week. The one thing I do think is very interesting, which we saw against Mallorca, that was the last game we played, right?
Yeah.
Was so Arda has obviously been playing as a more, for the most part, been playing as like the facilitator in a, you would call it a pivot position or number 6 position, and been a facilitator. But against Mallorca, where we knew it was going to be a deeper block, Xabi shifted his position to the number 10. And I think what we'll see is, like, with Howson, he almost plays, especially when you're playing against the deep blocks, like he can play that facilitator cruise role. And so then Chouameni can be the lone pivot and Arda can push higher. But I think when you play against PSG or like some of these other teams where it's going to be harder to build out from the back, I think you'll probably see Arda's position come closer to Howson and be that facilitator and that double number 6 like he was in the Club World Cup. I think we're going to see some of that shifting back and forth.
Do you remember that game against Pachuca in the Club World Cup
Yeah.
where he was playing in a very advanced role, and then we got the red card early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then so because of that, he played a little bit deeper. But then in the second half, you went back and then he scored, and he was just causing all kinds of chaos. I think the Xabi Alonso, the Xabi Alonso Fede Valverde version is probably something closer to that. But because he's Fede Valverde, will do whatever the team needs of him.
Yeah.
Um, I'd be really interested, and I don't think we'll see it much in part because we have like 8 attackers who need playing time. But like if you gave Fede like the Mastantuono role, like on the right wing, or just got him to like, break lines from that side, I
Yeah.
think it would be really cool to see, I just because like he's so devastating in those positions. But
What's been your
um
take on Mastantuono these first few games?
I think pros and cons. The pros are that he's fearless, he's demanding the ball, he's proactive, he's trying to do things. Um and then I think some of the things that his game is lacking is kind of the explosiveness. Um, he's a different kind of dribbler to Vinicius in that he's not going to break lines and cook 3, 4 players and create something out of nothing, but he is very technically gifted. He's a great long range shooter. He's good in tight spaces. He's been working his ass off defensively.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
I
And
think that's the one thing that
yeah,
surprised me, because I think I mentioned to you I watched some of his games with River Plate and I didn't see that defensive aptitude in those games. So I think that's surprising, how hard he works. But everything else, I felt like, I, not to toot my own horn, but like this, I kind of made the assessment that, like, hey, he's not going to be your traditional winger. He's not going to be players for pace. He's not that fast. He's quick, but he's
yeah.
not fast. And he's kind of got close control like Di Maria, and he's favors 1 foot like Di Maria, but he's not, like, he's more of a number 10 than he is a winger. And the final product is far from polished. Like, I know a lot of people were hyping him up, and like, I think you saw him, like, I just feel like he came in with a lot of hype. And I'm not saying he's not a great player, but I don't know that he's, when everyone's healthy, going to be starting.
I don't know either, but what I do know is that Xabi Alonso like really believes in him. Like you could
Yeah, he
tell, like
does. Yeah,
he's
he does.
carved out that right wing role for him. When I wouldn't like say that there's an urgency for Mastantuono to start.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like if you ask me right now who is the better player on the right wing between Rodrigo and Mastantuono, I would say Rodrigo. Like a Rodrigo is more established, more experienced. He's a better dribbler. Um, but I think Xabi Alonso has categorized it as like Rodrigo and Vinicius are my left wingers, and then on
Yeah.
the right wingers I have Mastantuono and Brahim. And then there's a whole discussion of when Jude comes back, are you still going to do a 4-3-3, or what's going to happen there? But I think the the thing about like some of the things that I think Mastantuono's game lacks, and by the way, the defense thing, I had no idea. That's the one concern I had, not because I didn't know, if I didn't think he would defend, but because I didn't know enough about him. Like when I did the scouting report and I brought in the Argentinian football podcast guy, he said, you know, I guess the question mark is like, will he buy into Xabi Alonso's pressing and the defense and all this stuff? And so far, it looks like he has. But I think when we talk about things that he lacks, I think the caveat is like he's literally the youngest starter we've had in the past 20 years. He's literally younger than Vinicius was when Vinicius was promoted by Solari.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so, like, think about how raw Vinicius was and how much he improved since then. And like, and so that you have to factor in, you have to. And the way I worded it was like, you have to be you have to be okay with the growing pains if he's going to play a lot of minutes, because he does work his ass off defensively, just like Vinicius did when he was first promoted. So like it's very difficult to have a low floor with a player like that who's talented and just works hard. So like that, I'm okay with some of like the unpolished offensive stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, Xabi Alonso made the point about Arda Güler during the Club World Cup is like, hey, you've got to deal with the growing pains in order to get the benefit. Like, this is such a talented player. Like, let's just deal
Yeah.
with the growing pains. And I think that's kind of maybe his mentality with Mastantuono as well. And I think I love that. It's like we haven't had that in a while. Like a coach that's willing to, because Carlo would always say, "Oh, the sporting demands make it so that I can't play, like the sporting objectives and the sporting demands make it in environments that the young players aren't ready yet." Whereas Xabi Alonso's like, no, you have to cut your teeth at some point. Might as well do it now. Like, and I recognize how he recognizes how much of a talent these players are, and so he's willing to go through that process and go through the development phase with these young players, and it's great to see.
I'd like to ask you about Arda Güler in a second, but first I wanted to remind everybody, if you're on YouTube right now, please hit like, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Those are two calls to actions that I always forget to do, so please do so right now if you like the channel. And also wanted to give a shout out to Moji Mates. As you can see on the screen, so much new Real Madrid swag. Go to moji-mates.com. That's moji-mates.com, and you got everything from Gareth Bale's iconic celebration to Jude Bellingham's iconic celebration to 5 different versions of Cristiano Ronaldo to Karim Benzema. We're gonna ignore this one and a bunch of other stuff. Luka Modric. Look at this one, really cool Champions League version of Cristiano Ronaldo. So go to moji-mates.com and pick up some Real Madrid swag. Arda Güler, um, give us your thoughts so far.
Um, really happy with him. I think one thing I noticed during the Mallorca game, the first 20, 30 minutes, was we were losing every second ball. So what I mean by that is like every header that was like a 50-50 and the ball drops, who's picking up the ball? Mallorca was picking it up. And it was kind of the areas where Arda Güler was. And I think Xabi Alonso picked up on that because immediately after the water break, the team completely changed. That's actually, if you look, we scored because I actually had to watch the game recorded. And so I tried to fast forward through the water break and I fast forwarded too fast and I missed the goal. So we scored like almost 60 seconds after the water break. And that I think is, again, this is kind of the nice part of having such an intelligent code and tactical mind on the side of the pitch. But I think Xabi Alonso quickly picked up on that. And I noticed Arda Güler's position slightly changed and we started picking up all of the 50-50 loose balls and the second balls. And we scored one and then two, like back to back right after the water break. And so I think, yeah, I think Arda under Xabi Alonso is going to be huge. And I've really liked his performances. Like even when he does struggle like he did against Mallorca in those first 20, 30 minutes, he's still providing end product, which is, again, like we talked about, the give and take on these young players and being able to process that growth. You know there's going to be some give and take. And with Arda, he's still producing on that end product, which makes it worth it.
I also think he's been pretty solid defensively too. I do recognize that there are moments where you can see that physically he's not as strong as some of the players he comes up against, but I do think defensively, like he's been making strides, and that's something I'm happy to see as well. Um, I'm fascinated to know what happens when Jude comes back. I'm super excited about Jude's return, by the way. Shoulder Uh, Jude post shoulder surgery without shoulder problems is a very exciting proposition to me. I can't wait to see it. With Xabi Alonso, this is the question that everybody's been asking. Everybody's asking it. What does this look like when Jude returns? Who gets dropped? Are we still sticking with a 4-3-3? Are we going to go more towards a 4-4-2, like a diamond, something similar to what we saw in the Club World Cup, where Vinny or Mbappe just takes the place of Gonzalo Garcia with Vinny up top and then Jude just behind them? Like, are we going to see that? That's my prediction, by the way. I think it's going to be Tchouam&eacute, Güler, Jude, Fede, and then Vinny and Mbappe up top. If it's not Mastantuono who goes to the bench, then the other logical player would be Arda Güler, which I don't know if it's going to happen. And of course, this all depends on availability, and I'm sure Arda will get rest at some point, so it's not going to be every game. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those two. It's Arda or Mastantuono. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
What I'm looking forward to with Bellingham is the fact that he's going to be able to do less to do more. And what I mean by that is we know Bellingham, like he will give his life out there and run the length of the pitch back and forth, doing almost everything similar to Fede. And he doesn't have to do that anymore. And now he can be not necessarily restricted, but just given clear directions and a clear role. And I think it'll actually allow him to do more over a longer period of time. Like I think Jude would do so much that by like 6 months, he's exhausted and like the best of him is no longer available. I think now, especially with the shoulder healed, he'll be able to put together a full season of just incredible Jude Bellingham moments because he's not gonna be tasked with having to do everything.
Yeah. I think regardless of whether it's Mastantuono or Güler, I think it's pretty clear that you're deviating from the 4-3-3, right? Unless
Um,
unless
I
unless
think it's the
Jude.
same system. I just think he's in one of those two spots, and I think it's probably. I mean, we saw in the Club World Cup it was the Mastantuono spot. So I think it. I don't think he'll be as wide as Mastantuono, and maybe
No.
him and Arda flip flop in game. But I think that's what it's going to be.
If him and Arda played together, the way they had been functioning in the Club World Cup was that Arda takes the deeper role, Bellingham takes the more
Yeah,
advanced role.
yeah.
Obviously, we know Bellingham is far from a traditional right winger. He can play on the wing, but as a completely non-traditional winger, someone who can cut, who drifts across horizontally, tries to get in between the lines, tries to show himself as an outlet all over the field. But if he takes Arda's position in the team, actually, there is a chance it would stick to a 4-3-3 where he would just drop as the 8 and Mastantuono would stay on the right wing.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen that version of Jude since probably Dortmund. But obviously, he exists. He exists as a midfielder, and uh, Xabi Alonso and Lucas Navarrete have been beefing about this. Is he a midfielder or is he not? Um, and I, it's easy to forget that Bellingham is a midfielder naturally. So, yeah. We haven't spoken about Tchouam&eacute.
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned how I think Howson, especially against deep blocks, kind of releases Arda up the pitch, but I also think it frees Chouameni a little bit from having to be that facilitator, which we've talked about before on the previous podcast. Like I don't love him in that role. And I think that's allowed him to I mean, he's transformed. Like there's no question about it. He took a level up after the booze, but even since then, at the Club World Cup, and then at the Club World Cup, it was another level up, and then at the start of the season, it's been another level up. And this is the guy we thought we signed. Like we've been waiting. When did he sign? 3 years ago? 4 years ago? It's been. We've had to be patient, and I think this is kind of, and now like, hey, look, it's a stretch of play. It's been maybe 6 months. We wanted to do it over full course of a season, really prove himself, but it's clear that Xabi Alonso loves him. He is, as we often say, the pillar, and he has just I can't get over the transformation. Like this is the guy we wanted to sign and expected to sign, and I think Howson really does help. And having Arda, like having more of these players that can do some of the things he may not be exceptional at makes him able to focus on the things he is exceptional at. And I think it's gotten the best out of him. And I think Howson has lessened the need for somebody like a Rodri or Zubamendi, because now you have that player already as a center back, and so Tchouam&eacute can go do Tchouam&eacute things.
You remember the season that Cruz departed? You and I were doing that podcast in Dallas, and we were talking about how, you know, Tchouam&eacute has such a huge role in the post-Cruz era as the guy who distributes from the back. Like, I think this is what we meant, because this
Yeah.
is, when he hits all of the boxes and plays at his best, that's the player he is capable of being. Did you see that assist to Mbappe for
The friend
France?
I saw I
It
didn't
was,
see the game, but I saw a compilation of his performance, and it was
yeah,
unreal. I was like,
it
"Oh
was
my
unreal.
god."
I watched it live and I was like, Leah, this is literally what we've been seeing under Xabi Alonso. He's winning the ball all over the field. He's organizing everything. His progressive passing is insane. But that one particular pass he had another one too in the first half. I forget to who it was, maybe Doué or somebody. But it was just like this incredible pass into the box that was disguised. So like this is also the guy who can help you, with your ball progression. When he's at this level, he's lights out.
Well, what I wrote about this against Oviedo was remember he had like a triple tackle and just like crunching tackles, like one right after the other. I think it
Yeah,
led to one of the goals. And he's now the guy. He's like Roy Keane back in the day, or Patrick Vieira, like setting the tone with just the aggressiveness that he plays with, and how the strength and force of which he comes in on those tackles. It's like takes your breath away. You're like, oh my god, but he
yeah,
gets the ball and it's 100% clean. And yeah, I feel like he's really gotten that down over the last few months, especially.
yeah. He's just been incredible, incredible. And now, like, we wait to see, Kamavinga return as well. Someone who we
Yeah.
haven't talked about much, but he is going to also be key because he is going to be the backup DM. You know?
Well, I mean, I don't even know if he played. Like, I think yes, he will play DM, but I think he'll play the Fede role. I think he'll play the Arda role. Like, I think Xabi Alonso talked about how he's like the prototype player for his system. And so I mean, when everybody's fit, it's actually gonna be really interesting to see what Xabi Alonso goes with. Like, you could theoretically, like, I could see Camavinga and Bellingham playing over both Arda and Mastantuono. Like, I could see that happening.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it's a huge variable, huge wild card. We'll, fascinated to see Kamavinga's return as well. All right, we got not long left. What are some of the things that we missed? Anything?
I think the only person we haven't really talked about that we should is Carreras.
Oh yeah, wing backs in
He's
general, actually.
Yeah,
Trent
wingbacks in
Trent is another
general.
one. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, that last game, Trent, I think we started to see what Trent can bring to the table.
yeah,
And so that was his best performance yet. And I was so upset that Mbappe goal got disallowed, because it was just a work of art between him and Trent. Um, but yeah, Carreras, that goal line clearance, like the guy is just I love I always make the comparison because I think it's perfect. Like Felipe Luis, doesn't he remind you of Felipe Luis? He's like like really solid both ways.
mm,
And like kind of carries the ball when he dribbles the same way as Felipe Luis, just makes the right decision. Like he's not going to be Marcelo and like blow you away with his creativity and his ability on the ball and his technique, but he's also like he's just very solid both ways, and he is a major upgrade in that position.
been incredible. Um, he might be maybe the unsung hero of the
Yeah,
season by the
I
end
could
of
see
it.
that. Yeah.
Um,
Did you see what Xabi Alonso said after the game? That like he was adamant about wanting to sign Carreras because he had scouted him and he wasn't surprised by everything he's doing because he knew. So like I love to hear that. I love to know that type of intel and know that it wasn't just the club pushing, like it was Xabi Alonso really pushing too.
I think it's now. I don't know. I can't say for sure, but because a lot of people said like, well, how come Carlo didn't get a left back like that, or like, you know, would Carlo have gotten this player and that player? Is it fair to him? Like, I think it's been pretty clear. Xabi Alonso himself has been pushing for players and asking for players that he thinks will fit his system. It's very clear that he was very high on Mastantuono. He had conversations with Mastantuono before he was signed. It's pretty clear that he's looking at players like Carreras. He's like, that's the guy I want in my system. Like, I think he just has to deserve credit for that. Like, it's not like he's just like, oh, he got lucky, he got with these signings. I also think that Trent is going to be an important player. I don't think we've fully seen it to the capacity that it's going to happen yet, but we've seen glimpses of it, and I think he is going to be a really, really big piece of this puzzle. And we saw glimpses of it against Mallorca. I think Trent's going to be a focal point.
I do too. Yeah. I think we're going to come away at the end of the season saying, wow, Trent was a much better player than I ever realized.
Yeah, yeah. I also think that he may not have hit his peak yet. I think what he did with Liverpool was incredible, and I mean, there's a reason why he is generational for that position. But he was so young, and he's still so young. He has half of a career ahead of him. I'm pretty excited about Trent. I don't think we've seen it to the full capacity, but I think given how much importance Xabi Alonso puts on that particular role, and what we saw with players like Frimpong, and the ability to just give wingbacks like that kind of freedom, I'm pretty excited because he has the passing ability as well. When we saw those passes to Mbappe were ridiculous. I mean, even the Club World Cup when he was like not even close to being at his best, he just pulled up like 2 assists out of nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's going to be big. All right. Final thoughts, Matt. Did we hit it all?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
At the very, very, very latest, I can promise you Matt will come back next international break. But I'm just under promising, and I'm hoping to over deliver on that and get Matt on much more
Me too.
frequently. Yeah, and I just wanted to, before I wrap it up here, mention to you guys that if you're in Toronto, we are working on an in-person podcast, but we also wanted to give a shout out to the person and the guys who give us a platform to host podcasts in Toronto, and that's TAFC Academy. If you head on over to tasports.ca, you can sign up your kids at the best training in Toronto, the best facilities, the best coaching. They got everything in the academy. They got swimming clinics. They got basketball clinics, and obviously footy clinics. And you want to make sure you go, excuse me, at the end, I'm losing my voice in this podcast, but you want to make sure to go to tacsports.ca if you have kids and sign up your kids at hands down the best academy in the entire city of Toronto. All right, Matt, this was fun. It was great chatting to you. Listeners, thank you for being with us. And again, just a reminder, if you're on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe. If you want bonus content, we got a ton of bonus content coming your way after the international break and a couple more episodes for members only. You can go to patreon.com/managing Madrid. If you're on YouTube, you can simply hit join on the memberships tab of the YouTube channel. Thank you, Matt. It was awesome chatting
Thanks,
with you,
Kiyan.
catching up with you. Peace out. Take care.